the inimitable, the esteemed Adolph Reed. Hello, Adolph. How are you?
Oh, fine, fine. And how about you, Katie?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm so excited to have you join us on the show. I've really been enjoying your book. It's really
Oh, thank you.
excellent. Yeah,
Oh,
it's a
oh,
great
thanks for having
read.
me on.
Yeah, of course. And it's called The South, Jim Crow and Its Afterlives. And you also have a new podcast out called Class Matters, and that's been great. So you're just producing tons of new great content. I wanted to ask you, what made you write this book, The South?
Over 20 years ago, like a couple of friends of mine, both also with roots in the Deep South, one a few years older, the other a decade younger, and I was just sitting around musing about the fact that when our general age cohort leaves the scene of history, there won't be anyone around with direct living memories of what the Jim Crow order was like as a lived experience. So we chatted about that for a bit, off and on, a few times, and then I just started writing. I think around 2002, 2003, and it was um, mainly a series of vignettes, right? And then eventually, the historian and my good friend, comrade Barbara Jean Fields, urged me to turn it into a book, basically. And my former agent, Faith Childs, in Manhattan, read it, and this was key. Like, she gave me, I think, 15 points for to keep in mind for the revision, and that's what I needed, and that's how it became a book.
It reads kind of like autobiography, kind of like history, kind of like
Hmm.
almost literary criticism, kind of like sociology. I mean, it just has a very interdisciplinary feel to it.
Well, I
And
tell you, that's why I was kind of moved when Skip Gates compared it to Gene Toomer's Cane, which was like a multi
oh wow, yeah.
genre product. I was honored by that, but I mean, yeah, yeah. The one thing I've resisted, right, and the Verso publicity department will tell you just how much I resisted, is characterizing it as a memoir, because it's not really. It's it's a rumination on a particular historical period, and from with the boost, I guess, of an insider's perspective.
Well, so you divide it up into different like time periods and locations. And can you just share with people? I thought it was so fascinating just learning about your family's origins,
Hmm.
where they come from.
Well, yeah, my mother's family is most immediately from South Louisiana, and my father's family is most immediately from Southeast Arkansas. My mother's father was a Cuban immigrant, and her mother was from Poincape Parish, um, and and like the funny thing about her is that her mother and her siblings, she was the eldest, and they left her when she was around 12 or 13 with her invalid grandmother to tend for her in New Orleans, and the rest of them moved to Brownsville, Texas, for a couple of minutes, and then to Tampico, Mexico, and then back up to San Antonio a generation later. So like we cover the Gulf of Mexico, basically.
You say in the early years of the century, on sporadic visits to the South, after having left the region completely during Ronald Reagan's first months in the White House, I was constantly struck by how much the ways that things had changed in the region seemed to
Yeah.
underscore the ways they hadn't, and vice versa. How the ways things haven't changed underscore the ways they have. Going there was like traveling back in time, yet at the same time not. So, can you expand on this and what you meant by that?
Well, it's kind of tough because even when I wrote that and felt it and said it to people, it felt like incoherent, semi-new age babble to me. But I think that really what it comes down to is, and like this is something that might be useful for people to think about, that um, that there are forms of interaction, um, patterns of expression, sort of um, um, and everyday etiquette right? That's formed in one period, um, around one sort of concrete historical and political economic context and pattern of social relations, and the forms can persist, right? I mean, even though the context that gave them meaning changed radically, right? And I think that's the best way to understand that sort of in and out of time experience that I had, because what I think I was responding to was sort of everyday rituals of interaction, right, or of action, right, or modes of expression, that would make one think of earlier patterns, or earlier expressions of power relations, right? That, but the forms of expression don't necessarily, um, or the the forms of expression persist, but the patterns of power relations that gave rise to them have changed, right? So like one expression, right, I mean, down in that part of the country is looks like ain't is.
Mm.
Right.
Looks like ain't is. Uh-huh.
Right. And that's kind of a key perspective to walk around with, I think.
You give really interesting examples of your experiences that you remember. One of them is when you were riding, was it a ferry that was divided with
right.
chicken wire?
Right. Yeah, it's really funny because as a small kid, it like took me a while, and I think this was exacerbated by going to different places in the South too, because one of the things that people don't think about a lot is that, unlike South Africa, say, where petty apartheid was petty apartheid across the country, like the etiquette, there's that word again, of enforcement of petty apartheid, of separate but equal, varied from place to place, right? So like, for instance, in Montgomery, one of the precipitants of the bus boycott was a particularly offensive way that segregation in public transportation was enacted. So in Montgomery, blacks would board the front of the bus, pay, get off, and then reboard through the back door. And it didn't happen that way in other places. But one of the indignities in Montgomery was that often enough the bus drivers would pull off after getting the money, right? Just to be jerks. So in the context of both going back and forth from outside the South into the South, and then to different places in the South, and then just being kind of stupid, it took me a bit, right, a good while, to internalize the rules, to internalize what the rules were all about. So I was a little kid, and I loved to ride, the ferry across the Mississippi River to Algiers, back and forth. And I was on there one day with my grandmother, and we were sitting close to the dividing line, the chicken wire that separated the two, sides of the the seating area. So I asked her what that chicken wire was about, and she just said to me in a stage whisper that, well, a lot of crazy people ride the ferry, and like they have to sit on the other side of the chicken wire. I thought, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Did you notice that the crazy people were whiter?
Not really, actually. Yeah, it takes a while for all that to sink in.
Right.
In fact, I think I thought, well, yeah, good. I'm glad the chicken wire's there then.
Yeah, right. Thank God for small favors. Yeah.
Yeah.